1 year ago today, the Seattle Seahawks sent 33-year-old franchise quarterback Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos. In exchange, Denver coughed up 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a 4th-rounder, and 3 players. 1 week later, the Cleveland Browns gave up 3 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a 4th-round pick for Deshaun Watson, who, by the way, was facing potential jail time and, at worst, a suspension. What does this have to do with the video I'm about to bring up? Why am I talking about old news? Well, yesterday, news broke that the Baltimore Ravens were slapping the non-exclusive franchise tag on 26-year-old Lamar Jackson, who has no legal issues, and who, right now, is the very best of the 3 names I mentioned. The non-exclusive franchise tag allows any team in the league to negotiate a deal with Jackson, and all they would have to cough up is 2 first-round picks. Now, when I mention that, after talking about the haul that Seattle and Houston got in return for a 33-year-old and a quarterback who hadn't played for a year and whose future was in question, seems like a bargain. Hell, it seems like a borderline steal. So one would assume that in a quarterback-starved league, where as of right now, I could count of 7 teams that absolutely could use a quarterback, you'd think that teams would be knocking on the door trying to see what Lamar wants. Yet, 24 hours later, multiple teams have pulled their best Shark Tank impersonation and said, we're out. And we're not talking teams that might have a young quarterback that they still have some hopes in, i.e. Miami, who, as much as Dolphin fans had this hope and dream and prayer that they were getting Lamar, it wasn't happening. They don't have the draft capital. They don't have the 2 first-round picks, as much as sources may tell them, okay? They don't. 1 pick went to the National Football League due to Stephen Ross wanting to play grab-ass with Tom Brady. And the other one went for Bradley Chubb, that ultimately wound up going to the New Orleans Saints for Sean Payton. Another person they tried to play grab-ass with. It'll be their head coach last year. I love Stephen Ross sometimes. So Miami's out. No surprise. But some of these names that are out baffle me. The Raiders, out. The Falcons, who have right now $68 million in cap space, out. The Commanders, who were the only team in the league who were willing to take on Carson Wentz's albatross of a contract and gave up a fairly high draft pick to get him last year, who desperately need a quarterback and sit at 16. Right now, their chances of getting one of the top 4 are going to take some miracle working or out. What the hell's going on here? I don't get it. The Panthers are out. Big questions. You've got people talking collusion. I have your answers, though. Look, it isn't the draft picks. I'll tell you that right now. Atlanta was willing to cough up the draft compensation to get Deshaun Watson. If you remember, at this time last year, all signs pointed to Watson being a Falcon. Every single one. And let me tell you, nothing Desmond Ridder, with all due respect, did in his brief period of time as a starter changed minds that they would completely abort ship and say, all right, he's our guy. We're not going to take Lamar Jackson. Absolutely not. Think they wouldn't give up that 8th pick? In a heartbeat, they would. Think they wouldn't give up 2 first-rounders when they were willing to give up 3 last year? Without thinking twice, they would. The Raiders? Come on. The Raiders are dipping their toes in the waters for Aaron Rodgers, who is 38 years old and talking about retiring if he doesn't get his way. They're willing to give up a fairly high draft pick for a 38-year-old man, but they wouldn't be willing to give it up for a top 10 pick for a 26-year-old who has an MVP under his belt? Who you fooling? Not me. Like I said, the Commanders, they gave up a second rounder for Carson Wentz, who next time we see him will probably be a backup somewhere. If next time we see him starting, will probably be in the XFL or the USFL. You don't think Tampa Bay he needs a quarterback? I'm sorry, they're not that much in love with Kyle Trask. Carolina, David Tepper has no problem spending money. Please. This guy gave Matt Rule with 0 days of NFL coaching experience. I think he actually, I think he had 1 season as an intern ball boy 15, 20 years ago. Gave him $60 million to have 3 10-win seasons, 2 at Temple, 1 at Baylor. David Tepper don't give a damn about spending money. Means nothing to him. He wipes his ass with that. And before people say, well, salary cap, who got the... Listen, I realize the salary cap isn't this phantom boogeyman like some people says it is. But it is the easiest thing to manipulate. They have cap specialists on staff for that reason alone. They can move chairs on the Titanic. They do frequently. They can kick the can down the road quite a bit. And believe me, if the Panthers want Deshaun Watson, or if Panthers wanted Deshaun Watson, they wanted Deshaun Watson too. If the Panthers want Lamar Jackson, they'll make the cap space happen. 9th pick, there's another situation. It's a real good chance. It's a real good probability that 4 quarterbacks are going off the books before Carolina picks at 9. They're going to have to trade up. They're going to have to give up 2 first-round picks at minimum to move up. You're going to give up 2 first-round picks to take Will Levis, to take Anthony Richardson, who, by the way, people are calling, people have called a mix of Cam Newton and Lamar Jackson. Why take somebody who might become Lamar Jackson when you could get Lamar Jackson? Why give up 2 first-round picks for somebody that might become a good pro, might become a Pro Bowler, but just as quickly could become a flop when you could get a proven Pro Bowler? Again, I'll explain why. It isn't the draft picks. It isn't even the money. And we've seen the money thrown around. We know what Lamar's going to want. Listen, yesterday's news that Daniel Jones, who coming into this season did not even have his 5th-year option picked up. There was belief that the Giants were going to move on after this year. He was teetering on bust category. Yet Daniel Jones just got $160 million over 4 years. Wilson got northbound of $40 million, almost $50 million. Kyler Murray, northbound $40 million, nearly $50 million. Watson, high end of $40 million, nearly $50 million. Lamar Jackson seeing all this and saying, you better pay me that jack. And believe me, the team will do it. The team will do it. I've heard 5 years, 260 floated around more than once, which would pay him around $53, $54 million a season. That's not even the case. 2 words are holding this up. 2 words have been holding this up from day one. He'd have signed a long-term extension if Baltimore would have met. Guaranteed money. Lamar wants it all guaranteed. The Ravens don't want to guarantee it. Neither do any of these teams. Not that Lamar ain't it. Lamar's that dude. But they have grave concerns that a guy who has missed significant time each of the last 2 years, whose primary bread and butter is his mobility, his running of the football, is going to break down. That he's going to be, here we mention this guy again, Cam Newton, in 3 or 4 years. And we all saw what happened to Cam Newton. Cam Newton was exceptional. Cam Newton won an MVP. Cam Newton led the Panthers to the Super Bowl appearance, only their second in franchise history. Cam Newton was never the same after that game. Cam Newton saw his career basically fall off a cliff. Cam Newton is still relatively young and can't buy a job in the NFL right now. Even as a backup, cannot buy a job. And there are grave concerns that Lamar Jackson is going to wind up in the same situation sooner rather than later. So you give him a 5-year deal and his career falls off an arc in 3, well, you've got dead money on your books in 2. I don't blame Lamar. Get your cheddar. You've got these, you've got Deshaun Watson, who is a, not the NFL player that you are. Argue this guy's a top 5 quarterback in the league. Deshaun Watson's not, doesn't have the baggage he has. He's getting guaranteed money. Where's mine? Where's mine? Do I think a deal will be struck eventually? I could say so. I think the two sides are going to have to meet somewhere in the middle, though. I think if you guarantee Lamar, say, 175, 180, maybe even 190, I think a deal could be struck. But if Lamar insists on guaranteed, the entire guarantee, he's going to be missing some prime years of his career. I don't think he can afford to sit out all next year. You've got a shelf life in the NFL, and that clock is ticking. So I think something ultimately is going to happen for Lamar, whether it's with Baltimore or someone else. I think one of these teams is going to say, look, we will meet you somewhere close to your asking price. We'll give you 250, 260, 265, even 270. But you got to give us some wiggle room with that guaranteed money. We'll load it with incentives. We will shitload it with incentives. You play 16 games, we'll jack more money on it. You win a Super Bowl, we'll jack more money on it. You win MVP, we'll jack more money on it. We'll guarantee 75, 80% of it. I think if you do that, Lamar will answer. But if he wants it all guaranteed or bust, we're going to stay in this revolving pattern for a long time. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'm JP. We'll talk soon.